Hi, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining the earnings conference call. We welcome the management team of Ujjivan Small Finance Bank, which is represented by Mr. Nitin Chugh, Managing Director and CEO, Mrs. Upma Goel, Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Ashish Goel, Chief Credit Officer, Mr. J. Srinivas Murthy, Head Liabilities, and Mr. Deepak Khaitan, Investor Relations. We thank the management for giving us the opportunity to host this call. The call will begin with an opening remark by Nitin, and then we will open it up for Q&A. Thanks, and over to you, Nitin.
Quarter of this financial year, and thank you for joining us this morning. I do hope all of you are safe and keeping healthy. I'll cover the brief about the first quarter and get into some details of the important elements, and then we'll try and keep sufficient time for Q&A as well. So, quarter one expectedly was a challenging quarter, as all of us were impacted with the second wave of COVID, and a lot of our own staff was also infected. We also checked with our customers through our internal surveys, and nearly 54% of our customers reported between partial to total loss of income during that time. Our collections dropped to less than 70% across the industry, but now we are seeing quite a good improvement. We managed to get to 78% in June, and July has been a remarkable recovery to 93%. The states and the regions which were more impacted than some others were South, where we had stricter and lengthier lockdowns. The three states that we operate in, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka, and partially in West Bengal also, where there are still restrictions on the suburban trains, which are not functioning as yet. So the recovery is better, but it's taking a little time. And Assam, as you know, has already been impacted for a very long time, and while there is improvement, but it continues to lag. In June, in South and East, collections were at 63 and 78% versus 92% in North and 83% in West. So that kind of highlights the difference between the different regions. And since we have a larger portfolio in South and in West Bengal, our collections were impacted accordingly. So we've been taking multiple steps to handle the situation and minimize the impact on our portfolio, and also keep preparing for growth. So the first one is that we stepped up on collections significantly. On the microfinance side, we use a multi-pronged sort of an approach with a very strong field mobilization with field staff, collection agents, off-road collections teams, and also supplemented with increased digital prepayments and the fintech touch points that we have through Airtel Payments Bank and PayMobile. In June and July, our collections efficiency was ahead of the industry, or probably a lot better than the rest of the industry, despite having the significant exposure to South and East markets, which are trailing the national average in terms of collections. Our collections from the digital means was about 16%, and another 35% came through our fintech partnerships, where we don't need to handle the cash. So roughly 51 to 52% of our collections happen through these alternate means. And this has been very helpful for us because we set up this infrastructure, or started to set up this infrastructure in Q1 of last year. Now we are in the process of also launching some innovative ways of repayments, such as WhatsApp-based collections, which will help our field staff, and that will also help us in strengthening the overall repayment mechanism. On the secured book side, we have really beefed up our legal framework and expedited all the legal recourse processes, and we do expect to improve collections and bring down the GNPAs on the secured book also in due course. On the provision coverage, in our last earnings call, I did mention that we will take necessary provisions once we are able to ascertain the impact of the second wave, and we were somewhat in the middle of the second wave when we had our last earnings call in mid-May. We've done a full detailed analysis based on how the book has been performing and how collections have got impacted, and on that basis we have beefed up our provisions by taking an extra 250 crores of COVID-related provisions, which is about 1.8% of our total outstandings. With that, our book coverage now stands at 8.2%, and PCR is 75% against 60% in the previous quarter. And I'll discuss this in detail when I discuss the NPA and the credit quality. Also, the Resolution 2.0 framework, which RBI announced on the 5th of May, we started working on this to help the borrowers who were struggling due to loss of livelihood, which I just mentioned, the extent to which we saw the damage. And we did see a large base of customers also becoming delinquent who were repaying regularly till March. In Q4 we had seen a very good recovery, but they obviously struggled to pay us in Q1. So we kicked off the whole resolution framework in June, and our plan is to restructure about 7 to 8% of the book to support these customers who were non-delinquent as of March 21. And we mentioned that in a lot of detail in our investor deck also. We also had, unfortunately, 1,370 employees who got impacted, many of their family members, and we also lost 9 of our colleagues. And while this has been very, very unsettling for us, but I think we've shown the resolve to rebuild the business and support our customers rather quickly. We continue to take care of our employees by encouraging, all kinds of safety precautions through vaccination camps and making sure that their families also get vaccinated, and also supporting the infected employees and their families to the extent that we could when the second wave was at its peak. So as of end July, 72% of our staff has been vaccinated by at least one dose, and considering that we have a much younger population, most people became eligible for the vaccination much later. And we are now making all efforts to cover all our staff, and which will not just take care on the health side, but I think it will also help us prepare better in case there is a third wave. On the regulatory side, there were developments in the quarter, rather in the month of July, and RBI informed the Association of Small Finance Banks, which we are a part of, on 9th of July that the small finance banks can approach RBI 3 months prior to completing 5 years of operations from the date of commencement, in case we wish to merge the bank with the promoter holding company. And what we plan to do is that we would apply to RBI sometime in early November, just 3 months before our 5th year, we finish our 5th year, and then go through the whole process of the approvals, the procedural approvals that are required. And we do expect that this whole process of the reverse merger can take up to 12 months to get completed. And we are working on all those procedural steps already. Now coming to the key highlights of the quarter, in mid-April, of course, we witnessed lockdowns across all the states, and disbursements therefore were impacted because we barely had 1/3 of the quarter available to us between the first probably 15 days of April and the last 15 days of June in some parts of the country. So disbursements were about 1,311 crores, which was down 69% from Q4, which was of course an exceptional quarter for us. However, this is 175% year-on-year growth over the last quarter, first quarter of the last financial year, which is not necessarily comparable because it was kind of a washout, but nonetheless. In microbanking, we largely disbursed to our existing customers who were non-delinquent and have maintained a good repayment track record. And Q2, of course, has begun on a much better note, with July disbursements being at 974 crores, as the restrictions started getting opened up. In June 21, our non-microbanking book is now at 32% versus 28% in March. Secured is now 30% versus 27%. While this is in line with our strategy of the diversification of the asset book to steadily increase the proportion of secured, part of the reason also is that the microbanking book has also degrown. So I would attribute this to both our stated strategy and the way we are working around it, and the causal effect of the reduction in the microbanking book. We did very well on the deposit side. Our deposits grew by 24% to 13,673, and retail continues to contribute to 48%, as much as what it was in March. CASA is also unchanged at 20%. 20.5 was in March and 20.3 is in June. And we grew very strongly by 77% on a year-on-year basis in CASA. Our branch banking is really driving the growth in retail deposits, and now also has a large share of the overall retail deposits. Our branch banking CASA actually grew by 130% year-on-year to close to 2,000 crores, and it now comprises almost 71% of the total CASA. So effectively, we are making sure that the CASA is led through retail new customer acquisition and the retail franchise through our branch banking channels. Just like assets, July has also been a good month for liabilities. The contribution of retail deposits has moved up from 48% to 50%, with a healthy growth in CASA as well. We acquired 1.1 lakh new liability customers, despite all the restrictions that we had in Q1. Total acquisition was about 2.1 lakhs, of which 1.1 lakhs were new to bank customers. We continue to focus on our digital initiatives, on improvement in productivity, cost optimization. Those were themes that we had started working on in the last financial year. There is a whole lot of detail on our robotic process automation, digital collections, which we mentioned in the investor deck, and I would urge you to go through that as well. Our non-interest income also remained an area of focus to supplement the interest income, and PSLC income that we booked in Q1 was 27 crores. Treasury operations were very healthy, net trading income of 40 lakhs, and we also benefited from the shift of from HTM to AFS portfolio by realizing about 11 crores in the P&L in the first quarter. Our capital adequacy, of course, remains high, and the LCR is also very healthy. So on the fundamentals, I think we are absolutely fine, as strong as ever. On the customer-facing channels now, while we've been working towards providing multiple to provide them better proximity as well as convenience, our digital platforms like internet banking, mobile banking are finding very good usage. We've covered that in a lot of detail in our investor presentation also, in terms of what kind of penetration we are seeing. Now, within the small finance banks, we are ranked number one in our number of transactions on mobile and internet banking, and we believe we command a share of nearly 45 to 50% amongst the SFBs, and consistently for the last 12 months. Now, there are some 407 banks that report their mobile banking transactions to RBI. This is a publicly available report. We are now ranked 32nd in March 21 versus 37th in March 20, and we are obviously increasing our ranking even out there amongst all the banks present in the country. Our branches and our phone banking channels are now contributing to cross-selling in a very meaningful way. We've seen improvement in cross-sell productivity across our phone banking channel also. It's nearly double of what it used to be about 12 months back. We continue to expand our reach in the form of tie-ups with fintechs, both for acquisition as well as collections that I mentioned, across all lines of businesses. In the MSE business, our tie-up for supply chain finance, which went live in Q3 of last financial year, has scaled up in the last 2 quarters, and nearly 100 crores was disbursed in the last 6 months. The personal loans tie-ups also went live in March and May, and they are gradually scaling up. We are working with 2 fintechs right now, and we do have plans to engage with many more on the back of our APIs. I have mentioned that we are increasing the proximity touch points for our customers for collections, and through our tie-ups with Airtel Payments Bank and Pay Nearby, we were able to add nearly 1,600 plus outlets in Q1. So the total number of outlets is about 11,000, and we will continue to add many more outlets based on where we have a need to provide this proximity location. Again, coming back to liabilities, while we are working towards building a granular deposit base with a rising share of retail deposits driven by the right sourcing mix, quality of accounts and improving sales productivity, our total deposits, like I mentioned, grew by 24%. The retail book now stands at 6,515 crores versus 4,929 a year ago in June 20. We are now offering also fairly competitive rates, much in line with the rest of the cohort that the participants in the cohort that we operate in, the small finance banks and some of the mid-sized banks. And that is also helping in our CASA growth, which is now at 2,773 crores, up 77% year on year. However, due to lower disbursements in our microbanking book, CASA was impacted. The CASA book in microbanking is largely linked to disbursals because customers like to keep their money after the money is disbursed into their accounts. So that did see a reduction because of the muted disbursements. So really speaking, the right way to look at it is to look at the branch banking contribution to CASA, which grew by 130% year on year, which I've mentioned briefly is now close to 2,000 crores and 71% of our total CASA. We've also introduced fairly good number of value-added products in our liability franchise, and have been focusing on improving the product mix with the objective of increasing and improving the quality of average balances, so that we create a liability base which can be cross-sold to over a period of time as we introduce more and more products. And there is a fairly detailed mention of the new products that we are launching even in the investor deck, and I'll also cover that very, very quickly later. Our retail branch banking average balances on the savings accounts has moved to 18,000 in June 21 to 11,000 in June 20. So that's also a fairly large improvement in the overall portfolio level balances. However, if you look at the new acquisitions that we did in quarter 1, the new acquisition average balances were at 42,000 versus 16,000 in Q1 of last financial year. So there is remarkable improvement in the both the quality and the quantity of the balances. largely because we are focusing on better quality customers, since we are very keen to build a long-term franchise which keeps enhancing the relationship value can keep getting enhanced through cross-sell. Excluding salary accounts, which has again been a very good story for us, and there are details of that also in the investor deck. The average balance of retail branch banking accounts is 20,000 as of June 21, and 53,000 for the last quarter, which if you include salary is 42,000. Our improved productivity levels are also, reflected in the 2.1 lakh customers that we acquired on the deposit side, of which 1.1 lakh, like I mentioned, were new to bank customers. Also important to highlight that the cost of deposits is continuing to trend lower at 6.4%, declining by nearly 110 bits since Q1 due to a higher proportion of CASA. And in July, our cost of deposits has come up by another 10 bits. So I think it's a trajectory which is very, very clearly, coming down, and we do see the benefit of that in our overall cost of funds as well. On the third-party product side, which is largely our strategy for the non-interest income, it is becoming gradually a good contributor to fee income for the bank. Most of it is coming through our distribution branch network on the distribution side. And what we did focus on in the last year was to increase the number of people who were certified to source or market insurance, and that number has gone up to now 3,056 people who are IRDAI certified. This number was closer to 400 something, at the beginning of last financial year. So we really stepped up on this. We are also now working on distributing this through phone banking and the other digital modes. We did introduce a lot of new life insurance and term plan products in the last year, which is again, gaining good acceptance. We again introduced 6 new participating insurance products in the last quarter, in Q1. While this quarter was subdued with fee income declining as compared to the previous quarter, largely because of the insurance income that comes from the credit life product, which is bundled with insurance and linked to disbursements. I think we managed to generate additional business of 40 lakhs largely due to the newly introduced products that I just spoke about, and an overall income of over 3 crores, which was up 86% year on year. In July, we are seeing again very good traction in third-party products. The premium has increased by 67% over what we did in the month of June. And as we mentioned in the previous earnings call, we plan to launch mutual funds. We made a mention of that in the investor deck again. We have shortlisted 7 AMCs for partnering, which will be completed in the next couple of weeks, and we do expect to launch this by the end of August. On the CSR side and on the employee side, as a responsible citizen, we continue to extend our helping hand to the needy in these times, in the last quarter especially. And while adhering to our usual CSR practices of community development and disaster relief, we also distributed beds, oxygen cylinders, extended support to COVID centers and hospitals. And in that process, we spent about 80 lakhs during the whole quarter on the CSR side. Along with this, the employee welfare was obviously prioritized, and we made sure that we vaccinated as many employees, which I just covered to the extent of 72%. Some details on our digital initiatives. Our digital framework is now completely aligned with our business processes, beginning with lead generation to customer sourcing, loan generation, deposit mobilization, handling collections digitally, and all of these are giving us very good and healthy results. In Q1, our digital efforts have resulted in some of these following outcomes. First of all, on the API side, the strategy and the fintech outreach program with our 159 APIs is in place for fintechs to build prototypes. And there is a dedicated portal which has been established for single window clearance, and you can check that out on our website. So in future, we do look at creating a sandbox also for prototyping with fintechs, and this is something that we are now taking out through an outreach program to partner with as many as possible like-minded fintechs. As of now, we have 3 live fintech partnerships for repayments and 3 on the lending side for personal loans and MSE. On the process side, which is largely led through robotic process automation, we have now 16 processes across business verticals which are automated through RPA, of which 2 are completely unattended. And another 15 are in the development stage to be automated in Q2 of this year. And we have many more lined up for the rest of the year. We do expect to automate nothing less than 120 odd processes by the end of the year. The good thing is that the RPA set of processes are now handling a lot of transactions. So nearly 1 crore transactions per month is what we've reached, and we made that mention in the investor deck. This is really helping us in making sure that there is business continuity at all points in time. We have a multilingual bot which is being made further even more intelligent, and this would help us not just in lead generation that it does right now, but also in handling some kind of basic and to some extent even complex queries from customers and even employees. Employees will also stand to benefit from this when they want to access any information about products and services of the bank. We are also in the process of strengthening our analytics practice, which is again a place where we've really invested in the last 1 year, and we do plan to transform all our businesses through use of data and insights in the next 12 months. A fair number of customer profitability scorecards, collection scorecards, underwriting scorecards, a lot of them were already in place, and we have developed and refined quite a few of them. And this will help us in making sure that we have the ability to offer personalized sort of products to our customers, and also make sure that we move towards better profitability at a customer level. And even in underwriting, we are now gradually moving towards more of scorecard-based processes, and this will always keep getting refined. With our AI stack in place now, we do have plans to also use AI for our underwriting and customer acquisition. We also have a framework for marketing to customers and engagement, which we had launched a few months back. That is also helping us with all kinds of digital campaigns, both on the portfolio side as well as new acquisition side. Now coming to restructuring 2.0, we kicked off the framework in June, like I mentioned, for the non-delinquent customers as of March, and largely who were regularly paying us in the first wave. These customers were personally met to discuss the situation on the ground and provide solutions. Like I did mention, 54% of our customers were indeed impacted through either a partial or a total loss of income during that period. So EMI holiday or a principal holiday or a tenor extension or a combination of these are being used to restructure, and the whole process of restructuring and the workflow would also digitize so that we make sure that there is nothing which is prone to any kind of human error, and we are able to also do it in a more efficient and a broad-based manner. In microbanking, we restructured 16,138 accounts, about 39 crores in June, including 8 crores from the Resolution 1.0 bucket. Another 750 to 800 crores of potential restructuring by 30th September is pipelined and may include 100 to 150 crores of restructuring from the first bucket. In MSE, 165 accounts to the extent of 20.7 crores was restructured, and I think another 78 crores is planned to be restructured by end of September. Likewise, in housing, we restructured 126 customers amounting to 10.6 crores, and we expect another 94 to 100 crores to be our plan for restructuring by the end of this quarter. In July, we have overall restructured 501 crores of the portfolio, of which 480 crores is microbanking, and the balance is MSE and affordable housing. Collections, like I mentioned, we witnessed very encouraging improvement in July. South had a remarkable pullback, and across all the states, I think we have seen a remarkable improvement, with the exception of Assam, which also did improve but continues to lag behind the rest of the country. So our overall collections improved to 93% from 78% in June, and the collections from the restructured portfolio was at 50%, which had dropped to 37% in June. We also saw a good traction in the early delinquency buckets. Nearly 150,000 customers who were NPA as of June 21 started paying us in July, and we saw an overall upgrade of nearly 300 crores excluding restructuring. And the PAR now in June, which we mentioned was at 30-31%, has now been reduced by nearly 800 crores and is now at about 25% as of July. So there is consistent improvement now, both on the back of collections, restructuring, and the customers who have now started to pay us who were earlier NPA as of June. Credit costs, I'll cover quickly. So while the collections went down, to 72% in May from 94% in March, and they have indeed recovered in July, like I just spoke about, it will take some time for us to go back to the normal pre-COVID levels of 98-99%. However, we have witnessed a good base of customers who were non-delinquent in March, as of March, who struggled to pay their EMIs. And for such customers, we had launched this restructuring program. And we, like I earlier mentioned, we will have roughly about 7 to 8% of the book which would get restructured by September. I would also like to highlight that the tightening of the credit policy framework and the underwriting standards, which we took as on the basis of a fairly cautious and conservative stance in the last financial year, The new book that has now got built to the extent of nearly 56% of our overall outstanding is behaving extremely well with very high collections efficiency, and the GNPA in this book is just about 0.4%. So really speaking, the pain is coming from the book which was prior to March 20. And this is actually a very good positive sign, and as the new book replaces the older book, and especially in the business of micro banking, I think the portfolio quality will only become stronger and better for us. And I think this also reflects our conservative posture in terms of new business, and we will make sure that we are not taking on any unnecessary risks just to grow the top line. So based on all of this, our estimate is that I know all of you would like some kind of a guidance on the credit cost. Unfortunately, we do not have a way to do that because things are still evolving and things are playing out, every month, while they have indeed improved. But we do expect to be able to, at least manage in a similar or a better range, provided we don't get into any other unpredictable and uncontrollable set of external circumstances like a third wave, and also not for too long. I had mentioned in my previous call also that if we get 3 clear quarters, we will have a very strong recovery. I also mentioned that, we are looking at a growth of 20-25%. We are sticking to that. It could be closer to 20 rather than 25 as things change, but it could also go back to closer to 25, things actually pick up a lot better than what we are estimating. We are also, since we are vaccinating our people, and there is a large vaccination drive across the country, I'm sure all of you are following that. We do hope that the impact of the potential third wave is going to be a lot lesser and restricted as compared to the first two. We also think that we would be able to afford the provisions, through the operating profits, and we will not have to dip into the balance sheet. I mean, that is one thing that I think we have been clear about even in the last financial year. On the financials, I think we have, especially on the cost side, we are focused on making sure the costs are in check, and we are continuously improving on them through various cost optimization initiatives. And despite the increase in NPAs, which has affected our income recognition, we have been able to reduce the cost to income to 65% from 67% in the previous quarter. The yields and the NIMs were also affected due to the higher NPAs, and all those details are mentioned in the investor deck, so I won't spend too much time here. We do plan to open 40 branches. Our original plan was 55 that I spoke about in the last quarter, but since we lost quite a good amount of time in the first quarter, we are rationalizing that plan, and we do expect to add at least 40 new branches in this financial year, and at the same time also keep investing in the API-based distribution infrastructure through our tie-ups with fintechs. At the same time, on the tech side, we will have a lot of new initiatives and investments, especially analytics, data lake, artificial intelligence, in capacity augmentation, in network optimization. So all those decisions and on the investment side are also being taken, some of which we had held back in the last financial year. Now coming to some of the new products that we do plan to launch, and this is really the last part of what I want to talk about. The whole philosophy is that we should be able to give meaningful and relevant products to our customers, which help us in building long-term and profitable relationships with them. Okay? So that really starts with a good liabilities franchise, or on the other hand, a good assets franchise where we have the ability to cross-sell liabilities and other third-party fee-based products. So the first one that we are going to be launching in this year, which we've spoken about, and we made some progress on that, is our credit card product, where we have finalized a tie-up with a fintech partner, and we would be sharing details of how that whole arrangement will work and when we are going to be launching in due course. At the moment, I can tell you that through our analytics scorecard modeling, we do have substantially large customers on our books who we believe are going to be eligible for providing pre-approved or some kind of cards, which also can, on the new acquisition side in future, we would have the ability to bundle with our savings accounts. All of this is also going to happen through a seamless digital onboarding workflow, so we don't expect costs to go up in this business because of customer acquisition, which is largely the largest cost in a business like credit cards. In microbanking, within microbanking, we were incubating the gold loans business. We had tried this whole pilot in about 5 branches. Now we are in the phase of scaling it up to 25 and then to 100 in the rest of the year. On the ECLGS scheme, we have begun disbursements in July. The ticket size is actually a very small, especially in micro banking, so it doesn't make too much, doesn't appeal very much with our customers. Nonetheless, we are trying that on our best effort basis and making sure that whichever customers are willing to and are eligible, we are offering them the ECLGS as well. In MSE, our micro and small enterprises business loans, we launched term loans, overdraft and cash credit facilities under the Credit Guarantee Trust scheme, the CGT MSE scheme. And this will also be our first cash credit product under the MSE. We are working on term loans, overdraft and cash credit for the healthcare segment. You will remember that RBI, when they announced the guidelines that were announced on the 5th of May, there is a provision to create a COVID loan book by lending to healthcare segment. So we have prepared ourselves for that, and we should be launching that very soon in this quarter itself. Mutual funds I've already covered, so I'll skip that. Personal loans, again, we are introducing a few variants, largely on the back of digital pre-approved loans, which will give us far better turnaround time with our customers and also greater efficiency. And we will also be launching products like bank guarantee for our capital commodity market clients, cooperative banks, etc. And a few others, of course, include used car loans, the WhatsApp-based EMI repayments, paperless Hospi Cash, our digital FTs through our partnerships, and foreign exchange products. So I think there is a lot that we have for the rest of the year, both on the collections as well as on the business side. But the way we've seen the month of July play out, we are extremely confident. We will continue to remain cautious. And since we are operating in a fairly evolving, dynamic sort of environment, also under the threat of a potential third wave, our efforts are going to be largely targeted towards improving collections and minimizing slippages, in continuously enhancing our products and services to make sure that they are relevant and they suit our target customer base, in digitizing our workflows for better efficiency and productivity, as much as also focus on cost optimization, and increasing our reach with a balance of physical and digital touch points. In the end, I would just say that we remain our sharp focus on improvement in earnings and quality of the balance sheet and maintain our conservative positioning related to provisioning. I'll stop at that and hand it back to Abhishek for opening this for Q&A. Thank you very much for a patient here.
Yeah, thanks, Rutuja. Can we open up for Q&A, please?
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to limit the questions to 2 per participant and to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Arsh from Dalal Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, team. So I have a question for Mr. Chugh. I'll just quote a few numbers. So in Q1 FY21, we took a 140 crore of COVID provision, and you mentioned that the provision was taken after 3 weeks of analytics done by the team. In Q2 FY21, you again took 100 crore of COVID provision, and you mentioned that basis your analysis and analytics plus management overlay, you have arrived to that number. And you quoted that I can only tell you that 3.4% of the book is reasonably comforting. Or then Q3 FY21, you took a massive 550 crore of provision. And you said that we believe that we have taken this bold call by acknowledging the fact that it could take longer to resolve the impact, and also to protect the PNL from any seen or unseen future damages. In Q4 FY21, when the results were announced during the second wave, you did not take any provision. When obviously the other banks and NBFCs and MFIs were adding to the provision. And in Q1 FY22, you have again taken a very big provision. And now you are on a defensive stand saying that it is only for the near-term slippages. So I just wanted to understand that did the analysis go wrong somewhere, or you misunderstood the pulse of the business? And looking at the stock prices also, each and every BFSI or MFI has recovered from the 2020 lows, but Ujjivan somewhere is in the similar range. So can we expect some logical move from the management on this?
Yeah, Harsh, let me explain that clearly enough. So in Q1 of last year, we took 140 crores based on our estimates of the things that were playing out at that point in time. We supplemented that by another 100 crores in Q2. By Q3, I had also very clearly mentioned that the impact of the moratorium having got over in August, and since we did get 3 clear months after the moratorium, we were in a better position to estimate not just for Q4 but also to an extent for Q1. However, there was no inkling of a second wave at that point in time. I think that we have mentioned that in the previous earnings call also, right? Now, when the second wave came in April and, in May, you mentioned that we did not take any provisions in Q1, for Q4, sorry, we were carrying 172 crores of provisions even at that point in time. The estimates cannot be, determined in advance all the time, and to the extent that we could, we have to also assess the situation as it is evolving, and on that basis you take a call. So I don't think our estimates have gone wrong in any manner, but you need to be a little more dynamic in taking your decisions to decide as to when you want to take those provisions. And since we were carrying 172 crores of provisions in Q4, which we carried over in Q1, there was reasonable comfort that yes, we would be able to take more provisions if we have to. Now, this 250 crores of provisions, of course, we are taking as a conservative posture. Okay, and I am saying I agree with you that we are taking a bit of a medium-term kind of a view or a short-term kind of a view, but things are evolving and things are only improving. So I think that is the reason I also did say that there is going to be a difficulty in terms of estimating the credit cost for the entire year. We will have to make sure that we are generating enough profitability and income to supplement, but at the same time also respond to the changing market situation. Things do look like they are improving as they are in July, and we do hope that things will continue to improve. But none of us know that whether there is going to be a third wave or not. And I think that was perhaps one of the things that nobody estimated when we were talking about our Q3 numbers, because we were in the middle of or the beginning of Q4, which was looking extremely promising, and nobody anticipated. The second wave has taken everybody by surprise. Now, coming to the stock price, I really can't comment on that because these are market movements, and there is nothing that I can say more or less on that. And I really don't want to compare ourselves on that basis. But what we can discuss in a very, very clear and transparent manner is what we are doing, what we have done, and what our thinking is.
Great, sir. Thank you, sir. So the second point I want to make is that I read a post on social media yesterday, a couple of days back, that the team flew to Pune to meet a portfolio management company, which what I think is does not have a very significant stake in the bank. So my question over here is that are you trying to raise money from them, or you are meeting such PMS and HNIs otherwise also?
No, see, these are regular investor interactions. Okay, the company that is mentioned, and we are aware of all of this, is a long-time investor with Ujjivan through their clients. All right. And this is not the first time that we are interacting with any investor or an AIF for that matter. Okay, so this is pretty routine for us. So we are not going out in the market to raise money. If we were going out in the market to raise money, we would have obviously notified that through many other ways, and that would have been a normal conversation in the market. Okay, so I don't think there is much to read into all of that. This is very, very normal, usual, business operations that we have as part of our communication and interaction with investors. And yes, because it's come out in the social media or whatever else, there is some bit of examination that is being undertaken at the bank.
Okay, sir. Fine, okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Harsh.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Renish Harish Kaibua from ICICI Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi Nitin. Thanks for the opportunity. So couple of questions. So one on this, this entire MFI group loan ecosystem. Since we are now collecting almost 50%, of the money via a third party, or I would say a non-traditional Ujjivan channels. So how you are maintaining the relationship or the communication with the customer in the same effective manner which we might be having, let's say, a year back?
See, that is a very simple thing to let me explain that. So 16%, like I said, is coming through digital, where customers are using one app or the other to make those payments, right? Google Pay, Phone Pay, Paytm, whatever else. Okay, and these customers obviously have been onboarded and trained by us, so we haven't lost touch with these customers. We still meet them at the center meetings. It's just that at those center meetings, we encourage them to pay digitally rather than handing over the cash to us. So the interaction is not going away. The second part, which is the balance 34-35%, which is coming through the touch points, there are two ways that work here. One is that customers have a proximity point, so they are free to go and deposit cash. But this usually happens when we are unable to meet them. Okay, so if we are unable to meet them because of lockdown restrictions like we've had for the last 15 months or 18 months, that is when that is very, very helpful, where we urge customers that there is a store next to you, 100 meters away from you, where you can go and deposit your repayment. Okay, and it's all tech-enabled. However, a large part of that is our own people who go and collect cash at the center meetings, and rather than coming back to the branches, they will go and deposit this cash at the payment outlets. Right? That helps us in making sure that we are handling lesser cash. Our people free up a lot of productive time, and they are able to spend more quality time with their customers. And in any case, if there is a situation where our person is unable to go and meet these customers for whatever reason, or a center meeting does not take place, you have the option of the customer also walking up to that payment point and making the payment. That is step one. In the long run, our plan is to also use these points for distribution. Today we are only using them for collections. But in the long run, we also want them to be distributing for us, and that is why we have done a tech integration on the back of our APIs. This is not a manual process. Everything is real time, right? And we have continuously improved on that. So it is a fairly long-term thing, and this is in no manner, going to in any manner or impact the discipline that people talk about of center meetings, because center meetings are taking place, and when they don't take place, like they were not taking place during lockdowns, etc., or customers were unwilling to turn up, or we were required to go and meet them door to door, then obviously these outlets help, because then it saves a lot of time for us.
Got it. So, Nitin, is it fair to assume that in a quarter, ideally would be meeting 100% of our customer base? Of course, not considering the second wave, but let's say between October, November till March.
Yeah. I don't think that has been a problem. We don't have a problem of non-contactable customers in our portfolio.
Got it. Okay. So second part, of course, is some sort of reconciliation. So you did mention about PAR 0 in July, sort of falling to 25%, wherein our collection in July has sort of improved significantly to 93%. So logically then the collection is ideally coming from the regular customers who were paying in June, and the customer acquisition from the delinquent pool is still sort of challenging. Is that the fair assumption?
The only thing, collections has improved across all our buckets. I can't think and can't see any single bucket where our collections haven't improved, including the NPA buckets. Okay, so it's fairly well distributed. Yes, the non-default accounts, NDA as we call them, that went up to, that was holding up in any case, but that also went up to nearly 99%. So it's fairly evenly distributed. There is no such thing that it's only coming from the early buckets and not from the, the base can be different. If, let's say one bucket in the later stage was at, let's say, at 20%. Improvement from 20 to 30 is as good as, improvement from 85 to 95 for another bucket. But it is improvement all across.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to ensure that the management is able to address questions from all participants, please limit your question to one per participant. The next question is from the line of Pratik Chheda from IIFL Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks for taking my question. I just wanted to understand, you've disclosed your portfolio at risk at around 30.8% on an overall level. Can you break this down on a segmental basis? And given this portfolio risk at 31, what sort of slippages are you expecting in the next quarter? The long-term view is difficult to give, but what sort of expectation is there for the next quarter? And secondly, the microfinance book has been running down. It's run down quite a bit in the quarter. Where do you see the microfinance book settling by the end of the year? The mix of the book?
Okay, let me first answer the part that you asked, and this is data that I'm sharing for the month of June, not for July. July I've shared the overall number at 25%. So in June, while at a bank level we were at 30.8, micro banking was at 37.1, housing was at 16.6, MSE was 29, personal loans was 15, and vehicle finance was 16.6. Okay, so that's broadly the PAR 0 for all our businesses. However, PAR 0 actually makes sense only for micro banking business. I mean, most of the discussions and the correlation really is established around PAR 0 for micro banking, not so much for the other businesses. But nonetheless, I'm sharing this with you. On the second question that you have, where do we see the slippages in this quarter? I don't think we have a good way of answering that in a very affirmative way. We will have to keep updating you on our earnings calls quarterly, and you have to kind of estimate from the improved collections to begin with. And as we see in August, things are looking better than July also, at least in the first week of August. So there is a lot of optimism that we believe that we will be able to have a much better quarter in Q2, both on the business side as well as on the collection side. The book on an overall basis, like I did mention, we do expect a growth of 20 to 25%, and we are sticking to that guidance. And therefore, the microbanking book would be a subset of that. And since it's also our stated strategy to grow the other businesses a lot more than the microbanking business will also grow in a certain range as compared to the other businesses, which would be have a larger growth over their base as of March 21.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sripal Doshi from Equirus. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Good morning. So my question was with respect to restructuring. So in the MFI book, what kind of restructuring are we doing, and what is the maximum, monthly holiday that we are giving to the customers? And the other question with respect to the same aspect was that if we look at the collection efficiency for the restructuring book, even in January, February, March was very low. So just if you can just throw some light on that aspect also.
Very low is relative, because if you look at the non-restructured standard book, then obviously it is low. But we had restructured a set of customers where the collections efficiency before restructuring was 49%. That went up to 75%. Okay, so it was a very good recovery on that basis. Yes, it has come down to, it went down to fairly low levels in June, and then it has improved from, that to 50% in July. But see, all those customers who were impacted in the first wave, a lot of them, or I would think most of them, would have been impacted in the
Ladies and gentlemen, sorry to interrupt. The line of the management got disconnected. Please stay connected while I reconnect the management. Thank you for patiently holding the line, ladies and gentlemen. The management line is reconnected. Thank you, and over to you.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I was saying that the restructuring, the customers who we had restructured in the first wave, I would think all of them would have been impacted by the second wave also. So when people get impacted by two consecutive waves, obviously it is going to show up in collections. I think we are not surprised with that. Now, the only thing that we can do is that we can provide for a higher coverage, which we have indeed done for the restructured book to the extent of 35%. Okay. Now, the other thing that you asked was that to what extent do we expect restructuring in microbanking? I did mention in my opening remarks that we have an estimate of about 750 to 800 crores of potential restructuring, of which we have completed 480 crores in July and roughly about 39 crores in the month of June. Okay. And this will also include maybe around 100 to 150 of customers from the first round of restructuring.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Tushar Sarda from Athena Investments. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Please go ahead, Mr. Sarda.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. My question pertains to credit cost again. What I find is that total collections for microfinance is around 11,560 crores, the amount due for FY21. Against that, what you've reported is collection of 8,600 crores. So there is a deficit of 3,000 crores, against which provision last year is only 800 crores. So are we under providing for the credit cost?
Collections due is, from day zero onward. Okay.
Yeah, I am taking the month-wise figures that you have provided in the presentation.
No, I'm also coming to that only. So nobody starts providing, from day zero, because you have time to collect from customers, and because of the situation that was there in all of last financial year, continuing into this financial year, I mean, nobody starts providing on day zero. There are norms that we are required to follow for provisions. And at a certain stage is when you start providing. Provisions again are to a certain extent of the book that you estimate to, go into NPA. And that is the whole reason why a metric like PCR is used. So I don't think we have underprovided at any point in time, and I did clarify that to the first speaker also who asked the same question. And it is mentioned very clearly, and that is the stance that we have maintained even in this quarter. We have taken accelerated provisions only on a basis of a conservative posturing.
No, now if you take, month-wise, let's forget the full year. Q1 FY21, the amount short collected is 2,256 crores, right? 3,000 crore was due, you collected 700 crores. So 2256 is the short collection. After that, the additional collections which you reported month-wise comes to only 600, 700 crores. So there is 1,500 crore which is due from Q1 FY21.
Q1
Which is almost 9 months, right?
No, I'm sure you will remember that in Q1 of FY21 and 2 months of Q2 of FY21, there was moratorium. And we had offered a blanket moratorium to our entire portfolio, much like the rest of the industry. So there was no demand only to begin with. I mean, this is a demand only on paper, but if you offered moratorium to your entire base, there is zero demand. Then you are not collecting against that demand. Whatever is coming in is over and above what is the demand generated for that month, because the portfolio is under moratorium. So it has to be seen in that context also, sir. And when the moratorium got over in August, and we saw, how many customers were able to pay or not able to pay, that is when we did restructuring in the third quarter. On that basis, we decided to take accelerated provisions in the third quarter. The only thing that we did not know at that point in time was whether there was going to be a second wave or not. And that is indeed which is again, caused damage. And that is again the reason why we are taking more provisions. It is reasonably simple in our head that way.
No. So what you are saying is that what was due in April, May and June, and because moratorium was there, you didn't collect it, but it obviously becomes due when the moratorium is over, right?
Yeah, that's what I said. So in September, October, November, after the moratorium got over in August, we saw how many customers were unable to pay, how many customers needed assistance through the restructuring framework, which was again announced in August of last year by RBI, which we implemented in Q3 on that basis. Okay.
No, so do you have a figure of what is due in Q1, or when the moratorium ended, what was the amount due and how much have you collected against that?
See, the dues are always on the monthly basis. If you have offered moratorium, then nothing is due. When the moratorium gets over, then you start the whole clock for that month, which happened for the month of September. So you will have to look at the demand for the month of September, which would be in the range of 1,000 crores or thereabout. Similar numbers for any subsequent month. And during that time, in August, September, October, and November, when we had a good estimate and a good view of how many customers were able to pay, how many were not able to pay, that formed the basis of both restructuring as well as the provisions.
Okay. I'll take it offline.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Thanks. The next question is from the line of Krishnan ASV from HDFC Securities. Please go ahead.
Hi. Many thanks for taking the call. I just want to understand, Nitin, from the severity of the second wave and how it has affected lives and livelihoods, what might be the permanent impairment that might have taken place in the customer base? Need not just be your customers today, but also the potential addressable market that you had as a small finance bank. What is your assessment of, say, the permanent impairment that may have happened?
I think our view is not going to be any different from any economist that you talk to. There are people who are saying on one end, only because of the first wave and not taking into account the second wave, there were people who were saying that 20% of population will slip into poverty, below poverty line. All right. There are estimates of X million jobs that have been lost, X million of income that has been lost.